So there's a little bit of a primary going on in West Virginia. Of course, we've talked about the Democratic side, Joe Manchin, Paula Jean Swearengin, which is going to be an amazing election, of course, because you actually have a true progressive going against a corporate right-wing Democrat. Now, the other race happening on the Republican side is also very interesting, because here you have a coal baron and a former inmate running as a Republican in West Virginia. This guy is Don Blankenship, and I haven't talked about him before, but as I said before, he is engaged in a primary in which the Republican establishment desperately does not want him to win. Now, why is that? Well, maybe this ad might have a little bit of something to do with that.
Hi, I'm Don Blankenship, candidate for U.S. Senate, and I approve this message. Swamp Captain Mitch McConnell has created millions of jobs for China people. While doing so, Mitch has gotten rich. In fact, his China family has given him tens of millions of dollars. Mitch's swamp people are now running false negative ads against me. They are also childishly calling me despicable and mentally ill. The war to drain the swamp and create jobs for West Virginia people has begun. I will beat Joe Manchin and ditch Cocaine Mitch for the sake of the kids.
Wow. There's a lot of fun in that. First of all, Cocaine Mitch, really? But I think the most obvious and glaring thing that happened in that ad was the new phrase China people. Oh, well, that's interesting. So Mitch McConnell's China people and China family. Wow. That actually is probably one of the most nakedly racist ads I've seen. I mean, because like, well, I mean, to be fair, at least he kind of updated China person to, or I'm sorry, Chinaman to China person. To be fair, but man, look, Mitch McConnell isn't even running in this race. He's in Kentucky. Why does he even bring up Mitch McConnell? That's weird. And by the way, like, don't make me defend Mitch McConnell. Like, I don't want to defend Mitch McConnell, but in this case, I'm going to have to. I mean, Cocaine Mitch? What the hell? What the hell? Okay, so let's get into the details about that, right? Now, it turns out Blankenship put out another previous ad that claimed that politicians blew up a coal mine and put him in prison. Now, I'm pretty sure that he did that by himself. I'm pretty sure that was your fault. In fact, a state investigation into Massey Energy, that's a company that Blankenship owned, found that negligence was the main reason for the explosion that killed 29 workers at the Upper Big Branch mine in West Virginia. So, oh, look at that. He presided over a mine that exploded because he was too cheap to put in adequate safety measures. Congratulations. He served a year in prison for this. Now, they pointed, the state investigators did, to the faulty ventilation system, the inadequate application of rock dust, and the equipment failures as cause of the blast. All that stuff, Blankenship should have actually known about if he were doing his job and actually fixed if he were doing his job. But he wasn't doing his job. He didn't care about the workers. And as a result, 29 people died. Okay. Now, that claim ad said, as I said before, the politicians, they decided to put Blankenship in prison. Well, again, I think there was a pretty good reason for that. But at the end of the ad, he again brought up Cocaine Mitch. Cocaine Mitch. That's very, very strange. Now, wait a minute. Does he mean that Mitch McConnell does cocaine? Well, anybody who's ever seen Mitch McConnell talk knows that that cannot be true. Again, maybe he could use some. I'm just saying. So very unlikely. But we know, and this comes back to the China family, right? We know that Mitch McConnell is married to Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao. Now, Elaine Chao happens to own, or her family happens to own, a shipping company in New York called the Foremost Group, right? So it was founded by her father-in-law, McConnell's father-in-law, James Chao, and it was called the Foremost Maritime Corporation. Now, back in 2014, The Nation put out a piece, and they reported that authorities in Colombia had found about 90 pounds of cocaine inside one of these ships called the Ping Mei. Now, this was a bulk carrier owned by the Foremost Group. So Blankenship, he sees that, and he's like, oh, they found cocaine in one of their ships. One of the China family ships. The Cocaine Mitch, right? Now, the ship was docked at the Colombian port city of Santa Marta, and destined for the Netherlands with a shipment of coal. Now, they found, like I said, cocaine in the hold. Well, what happened? The ship was docked at the Colombian, no charges were filed. Nobody was arrested. And there's no evidence that Mitch McConnell and his family were involved. So, I mean, look, if there's no arrests, no case, then you can't really say he's Cocaine Mitch. Nonetheless, China family, Cocaine Mitch, right? Now, look, Elaine Chao, by the way, is an American citizen now, and her company is an American company. So, look, that's about as much as I'm going to defend Mitch McConnell, because I completely disagree with all of his positions. Those are just facts, right? So, now, when called on in this ad, Blankenship decides to dig himself into a further hole. Now, he said, quote, "We're confused on our staff as to how it can be racist when there's no mention of race. There's no race. Races are Negro, white Caucasian, Hispanic, Asian. There's no mention of a race. I've never used a race word." Oh, well, just because you don't use a quote-unquote race word doesn't mean that you're not being racist. In fact, look, just mentioning the China family is a little bit of a racist dog whistle when you think about it. I mean, why bring up the family in the first place? Now, I understand the whole idea of attacking Mitch McConnell. He's fair game. And even if you want to criticize Elaine Chao, who's a public official, well, you could do that too, right? And you could also criticize the company, and you can also say, hey, wait a minute, maybe there's something a little bit shady about the cocaine that was found. Maybe there is some sort of smuggling operation going on. I don't know, right? Okay, if you want to point that stuff out, fine. But then you're going to go after ethnicity, which is a little weird. But I know what they're trying to do, right? So he's trying to say, well, I mean, China bad, right? Just like Donald Trump says, China bad. And you can point out to some of the trade deals and say, okay, look, yes, there are issues with our trade policies with China. That's fair. He's not doing that. He's not making any of those distinctions. He's not actually going after policy. What he's saying is that China family bad. Mitch McConnell bad. Therefore, Republican establishment bad. I'm not a fan of the Republican establishment either. But at the same time, you can point out actual policy positions where the Republican establishment is not on the side of workers. And you can point to their whole ideas of free trade. But this guy's not doing any of that. But what he's just doing is racist attacks. He's race baiting. And that's the reality of his attacks. And again, if you want to point out how China and our trade policies with China are leading the loss of American jobs because our corporations would rather go and exploit cheap Chinese labor, well, that is a perfectly legitimate observation and a perfectly legitimate conversation and criticism. But nonetheless, as I said before, they're not doing that. They're not doing that at all. So Blankenship is basically being an old school racist, straight up. I mean, look, back in the 50s and 60s, for example, they did call Asian people Chinamen. Again, once people realized that was offensive, most people stopped saying that. Don Blankenship knows that that's offensive and still continues to double down. It's like, no, what are you talking about? Chinamen. And then, of course, as he refers to African Americans as the Negros. Oh, my God. See, no. The point is that this guy is so bad and so openly racist that he is even scaring the Republican Party, who operates on racist dog whistles. But now in the era of Trump, we're beyond the dog whistles. Now we're employing human whistles so that everybody can hear it. And when you have the Republicans that are against somebody, well, that's when you know it's real bad. It's getting real bad for them. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.